Hello and welcome to Dungeon Master Talk, a podcast by Dungeon Masters for Dungeon Masters. I am Dungeon Master Shay, and with me today, as always, is...
Dungeon Master Kyle. How are you today, Shay?
I am doing great, man. Our football teams are doing great again. But the last time...
They win.
We didn't win, but we didn't lose either. It's that whole bye week situation, it's great.
Yay, sports.
I was telling the guys at work, I'm like, if we would have lost this week, it would have been a really bad day.
If you do accomplish, I feel like that's like when your character dies when you didn't attend D&D. You're just kind of like, huh? I feel like you guys just don't want me anymore.
We were getting ready to start our last session, and one of my players was spouting off to me just for kicks and giggles. And I said, okay, roll new characters. He's like, dude, I just died, everybody. This is awesome.
This past weekend, instead of playing D&D because not everybody could meet, one of the players in our play group, it was his birthday, so we were playing Blood on the Clocktower, and one of the guys was telling me, like, I'm not lying to you. And I said, do you swear on your D&D character? Like, if you're lying to me, I get to kill you off screen? And he was like, yes, if I'm lying. He was telling the truth. But
that's rough, my man. That is...
He knew I was playing. It wasn't real. I wouldn't actually threaten a D&D character outside of D&D.
No, but it's just funny to watch their reaction half the time.
Yeah, he got wide-eyed for a minute, and then he nodded at me. Then later, he was like, would you really?
You're here to talk D&D, we're here to talk D&D, and that's exactly what we plan to do for the next however long this episode goes. And thank you so much for taking the most valuable resource that you have, which is your time, and spending that time with us. We don't take that lightly. We super appreciate you being here at our table discussion here. If you just do us a favor off the top real quick, take like 7.8573 seconds and hit that.
You're really timing that.
I am. I actually did time it the other day. Hit that subscribe button and the like button.
How long do you hold the subscribe button?
It's a talent, I promise. That just helps the algorithms, helps get the word out about DMT. And if you feel led to, please give us a 5-star review. You can drop us a word in either the social medias and an email, and we'll give you all that information again at the end of the episode. But we just, again, thank you so much for being here and giving us that valuable time of your day doing whatever it is that you're doing. Maybe it's carpool lane, watching a kid's soccer practice.
And I do apologize for Shay lying to you, because you know that we're here to talk D&D, but I'm also here to trip him up. And I think we're all on to that by now. And so he said we're both here to talk D&D. He's here to talk D&D. I'm here to talk D&D and mess Shay up while doing it. So I think that's well documented at this point.
I can't confirm or deny that, but I do have the episodes as evidence. So you got that going for you.
Yeah, the whole you recorded me during these sabotage experiences was not in my favor. I don't remember consenting to it, although I do send you my audio, so that could be construed as consent.
I don't see why it wouldn't be consent, but anyway.
Exactly. So, listeners, Shay will have one of the most exciting things we get to do on this podcast, a live play update. I unfortunately will not, as mentioned in the opener there, played a different game because the D&D group couldn't meet. Soft role play in a game called Blood on the Clocktower. You can look that up outside. I don't know if it quite meets the family-friendly atmosphere we try to go for here. So viewer discretion is advised. But before we get to Shay's illustrious update and all the wackadoo stuff he's getting up to with his playgroup, love y'all even though I've never met any of you. Shay, we left off on a bit of a cliffhanger in our planning for this campaign.
Dun, dun, dun.
Bum, bum. So, gonna forego the full recap if you guys want to catch up the entirety of Season 2. Long story short, post-apocalyptic world, they save May Ma, who's mayor now, and we're in this kind of in-between time of the mini Arc 1, and then this is kind of the slow roll start of Arc 2, where they get to explore the world, do some side quests, and maybe unlock a little bit of lore using some video game speak, because we've done that really well so far. You know what we're about at this point. So, Barkeep has a job for the party, and that job is his shipment, which we're going to talk about that because the concept of a shipment of goods in this world might be a little bit difficult because, like we've established, this is the start of the first real town/city that is hopefully going to make it if the party doesn't burn it all to the ground, as they are wont to do often in my campaigns. Just saying, you guys don't tend to save a lot, destroy a lot.
I mean, we leave no witnesses half the time, which is not good, but it's not bad either sometimes, depending on the statutes of limitations.
It's a good thing you've never tried to revisit a town. We'll just say that. So, this barkeep has a shipment that needs to be recovered. So, Shay, let's talk. Well, where do you want to start? Do you want to start on what that shipment is, how that shipment exists, what the lore is, and how the party can find out about that? Or do we want to start with what the quest is, dive into that, circle back as George Lucas taught us, start in the middle, go to the end, come back to the beginning, work to the middle, find out the end wasn't the end, and go to the new end?
So, before we seek the Grail here, I think what we need to do, because you hit it on the head here, is in this world, there's not really a lot of towns yet. I mean, they're still rebuilding from the event. So we need to figure out, where
that
is
happening?
This? Yeah.
Oh, that was a movie.
Yep. So
demonetized.
I think we need to figure out, where is the shipment coming from? And B, who's in charge of this shipment? And what the issue has been as to why it hasn't gotten there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's going to be a good launching point for this new roll into the next part of the campaign. So I say we should do like we preach, and we should roll some dice to determine which direction this party is or is not going to be going to get this shipment first, or where the shipment is supposed to be coming from.
Right. And let's go ahead and eliminate west.
Yes.
Because they went west before, and there already is an option in the 5 quests that we laid out here that they can go back that way to
the Oktay.
Yeah, reconnect with them or to mend fences if it didn't go well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in that case, let's go. We'll still do percentile. We'll do 1 to 32 is going to be north. 33 to 65 is going to be east. And then 66 to 100 is going to be... Do you want to roll that, or do you want me to?
You can go for it. I don't have my dice near me.
Okay.
I'm surrounded by magic cards, not by D&D paraphernalia. My other hobby.
Okay, well, I'm gonna do some ASMR and roll into the mic here. 47. So we are going east. East is where we are headed, and we need to come up with a place that this distillery can come from. So this place should probably have a decent, either like a decent farming area, because you're going to need hobs, you're going to need oats, wheats, stuff like that, or a good way to import that stuff. And they're going to need a really good water source to obviously turn this stuff into ale.
Yep, and maybe some storage to refine it.
Yes, because it's got to sit, it's got to do its thing. So this is brain roll time. This sometimes takes me... Honestly, I think, listeners, the hardest part about this for me has been the fact that building this campaign, I can't really prepare. So a little behind the curtains moment for season 1. Shay and I would talk about that topic that we were going to talk about well ahead of time. And so I would, prep a little bit, be prepared, not seem like a dunce. And then with season 2, it was like, don't plan it outside of the episodes. Let it happen in here. And I was like, oh no, I'm creative when I have time to think about it. My type A personality is shooting me in the face right now because it's like, this is so anti-me.
Well, and see, I'm not even really type A. It's just more that's like I feel on the spot, the world is watching type moment.
Yeah, no pressure, right?
Exactly. But I was thinking this could be a cool opportunity to maybe introduce something from the past.
Okay.
And this, again, shoot me down if you have a different idea, or we can spin it. We can ditch it. We can, whatever our heart's content is, or reuse it for a different idea. But I thought this would be a good opportunity to introduce like the ruins of a former city from maybe before the fall.
Ooh, yeah.
And maybe it's not like a massive city. Maybe it's kind of, I don't know, what's like a good moderate size. So like not like a Chicago size, not like a
Omaha,
LA.
maybe?
Yeah, there you go. For our Midwest folks who know Omaha, Nebraska, great zoo. And so where there was some big buildings and stuff, but then not a ton. And since the fall, it's probably in disarray, probably been raided a bunch. And so my thought is it wouldn't be outside the realm of reason that nature's kind of reclaimed some of that. And maybe they were able to grow hops nearish this ruined city area. And then in the city, maybe they found a old brewery or distillery or what have you.
Yeah.
That they were able to convert for their needs in order to make ale to then bring here. And that, so like kind of fitting what's my thought for this is why, because immediately it's like, well, why isn't it, if they're going to make it themselves and like he's transporting to his bar here. And my reasoning thought after thinking about it for 0.87 seconds is that like in this post-apocalyptic world, the biggest pain point for starting civilization, for establishing a way of life that isn't purely nomadic, has been raid parties from the nomadic people and just other groups. So these specialists, so like we've already kind of established a little bit of precedence for this in that I think it was the blacksmith got all their goods from up a nearby mountain and they were hauled in and they didn't stay up there because they needed to be around others for protection. So like my thought here is live and operate in the city. You get all the benefits of being in the startup town, all the protection that they're forming there against the raids, but then hidden brewery and hop field that's away from that. So it's not obvious to wannabe raiders who are going to target the town. And it probably started off as like they were making for themselves. And then, you let one other family in on it. And then they let another family in on the secret. And it kind of naturally grew into, well, now they're providing for the town because everybody knows that they can. And now they're making money off of it. Maybe not so much a straightforward plan to do it.
So a couple questions that just came to mind. So if we're going to be making, our own ale and whatnot, are they sitting next to a river or a lake, a pond?
There obviously has to be some form of water supply.
So I'm wondering if it's like a running water type supply, like a river, because Silver Forge has a river next to it. Could this river have gone up along and gone to this way?
Yeah, so maybe the shipment's meant to follow the river.
That would make sense.
Maybe they even use the river. Like one thing I guess we never established, or maybe we did and my notes are incomplete. That's not unheard of. Like maybe this river is wide enough that you can ride on it, but not rapid. And maybe it gets to rapid points at some areas.
And you could probably get away with hauling a little bit more because of the buoyancy, depending on your boats. The other question I had, and we'll circle back to that. So the second part is, okay, so in our world, not Exarban, but in our world, Omaha has roughly about 500,000 people in it, give or take, maybe closer to about about 250,000. Now, what percentage after the event now has this regrown? Since it's been about 400 years, how much of this population has revitalized itself and come back? Would we say 55% of it? So
kind of my thought, I've been trying to rationalize outside of session here, maybe breaking a little bit of what I was saying about not thinking too much of like, why has it taken so long for civilization to rehold? And why weren't ruinous cities like this one that I'm describing where maybe something was even salvageable? Why weren't those repopulated and rebuilt? And so I was just trying to like work through it in my head that like, hey, this isn't like a lot of their technology, a lot of their progress, anything that they had like that was lost and destroyed. And so what I'm picturing is like this had to be a pretty devastating event. I mean, we've called it an apocalypse at times. And so I think people really turn, but in my head canon, and I don't know if this is real canon to this story yet until we make it that, you know?
Yeah.
But in my head, what I've been thinking of is like, there weren't a lot of people left and it became very tribalistic very fast. And you were either with us or you were against us type mindsets. And that created like problems in close confined areas like a ruined city, where basically they knocked themselves out of most of them pretty quick. And areas that people like won, they were quickly like, oh no, like we won this ruins, but we can't live off of it from here. There's not food, there's not game, we gotta hunt, we gotta forage, we gotta go figure out stuff. And I think like our guy here that's making these hops, doing it in secret's a big deal, because I think keeping farmsteads going past a generation has probably been very difficult. Because I'm thinking, I don't know how much people have read into like fantasy, like Midwestern fantasies, but kind of the idea that, you know, your farm's going to be under raid by the cowboy gang that's going to come and take all your food in the night type worry. And I don't want it to, like, I think there are periods of peace and there's people that have been able to establish it off in their own corner neck of the woods. And so, like, it wasn't outright warfare all the time. But I think there's a lot of hesitancy towards welcoming of outside groups from most, just because it hasn't gone well. And that's my headcanon.
I don't think that's necessarily a bad train of thought. I mean, most people are trying to self-preserve at this point, especially right after the event. So
yeah,
if there's a lot of little farms, there could be multiple like little distilleries, and like maybe they kind of come together under one like co-op, not necessarily a co-op, but like an umbrella of like, okay, we're all gonna work together to produce this product so that we can all eat. After maybe that happens after like 100 150 years, where people have started to actually get get the soil back to the point where it's actually usable again. They start getting a turn crop, and then now they can start the process of the fermentation and all the stuff that goes into that part. But I think keep it mostly like family friendly, and not really advertise like alcohol necessarily, but like, since that's what taverns are kind of known for, that's kind of why this particular side quest has kind of worked its way into the story.
Yeah, and I think like speaking to that, taverns in D&D really go hand in hand.
Uh-huh.
The concept of having just that center kind of commerce area, and it doesn't have to be, so sidestep for listeners here, we're exiting campaign talk for a minute. If you're running a campaign and you want to focus it for like your kids, it doesn't have to be a tavern. You can have a
market.
A barber's another great one.
Yeah.
That I've heard used before, because if you think about it, barbers, people come in, sit, get their haircut, talk a lot. And then a classic barber shop, the people waiting are also talking. The person getting their haircut's often facing them. And then it can even be a hangout spot. So you can do like a soda fountain, a marketplace, a barbershop, a central market, a town square. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be a tavern. I tend to gravitate towards taverns and having them because you can have so many different feels in taverns.
Yep.
You can have the rowdy tavern. You can have the like calm and collected tavern. You can have the party. Like we're gonna have a bard in here who's playing and doing a show for people, and people are into it, so it's really boisterous and happening. And you can also dilute an area as downtrodden by the fact that nobody's in their tavern.
Yep.
And it's hurting. And so that's why I tend to like it for campaigns. This campaign's quite difficult because traditionally what I would do here is, it was from this other town that's over here, and this is a trade route between the towns. And so trying to think of like where this would come from in world, we're like, well, they're trying to really establish the first real stable civilization. Like we've touched on, there's been attempts. There's like small hubs. There's areas that'll be populated temporarily. And then there's like family farm areas that's like maybe two families.
Yep.
Or like the brother and his family and the sister and her family.
Yep.
Right next to each other run an area. But this is the first like big gathering, so that's made it really difficult for me to plan out. Like, hey, where do they get their stuff?
One of the things too with taverns is typically with a tavern, sometimes they would actually have have rooms for people to stay in.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like the general market wouldn't have that. Your barber, obviously, you wouldn't have that. So like I think that's where we naturally gravitate to that in that respect too, because that's the travelers, adventurers tend to, stay for the night or for however long they end up in that area.
And with going into like the old history, thinking back to how things were in those times, water wasn't always safe to drink.
True.
At a lot of areas. And so it's obviously not something that we build into D&D campaigns.
Yeah.
But that's where that kind of ideology comes from, is that, hey, they needed to do something to the water to make it safe.
Right.
Yeah. That's part of where it comes from. It's not about celebrating drinking so much as it is.
Yeah.
Just kind of paying homage.
Okay. So that being said, let's say this. Okay. So the shipment that they usually have been, the tavern in Silverforge has been getting is roughly, take a
D8?
D8, okay. And we'll say it's like a week supply, like a D8 weeks, 1 D8 week supply.
Yeah.
1.
Drat.
Should we roll again? I think
I feel like we should.
I feel like that's
like,
yeah. 3. Okay, I can live with 3.
Yeah, a 1 week supply is like, would they care?
Well, here's the thing: if it was 1 week shipments, like they would be, if they were having this issue, they'd be out of stuff for potentially weeks at a time.
Yep.
Maybe like when they get sent out on this mission, be like, hey, we're down to our last like 3 days worth of stuff. We can hold off for a little bit, but not too much longer.
Well, and thinking business wise, typically, so if this was fully established, they would be backstocking, but obviously town's brand new. They haven't been here very long. So maybe the practice is that they get a supply, and then midway through the life cycle of the supply is when that shipment is supposed to arrive. There's that blooper reel. It's cross 9:20 my time, and my ability to speak is starting to deter.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, and sometimes you'd even like, especially like if you knew it was going to be a tough season, you might, stock up a lot more in the beginning to cover on, hey, this might take us a little bit longer to get you this next shipment. So, if you order more now, maybe, I don't want to get into all the business logistics of it, but basically, yeah. So we'll say like when this, at the end of this week that we're talking about, they've got roughly 4 days, 3 days.
No, sorry, I'm raising my hand because I just thought of something. Have we established so this world's post-apocalyptic, have we established currency?
No, we haven't.
Okay, because that's the thing, like this, they're trying to build
I'm thinking
commerce
barter system, honestly.
Yeah, it's barter. Okay.
Ooh, okay. We have the mine outside of Silverforge, right?
Yep.
So maybe
like
minerals, maybe like, because Silverforge is kind of on the edge of like farming country. Maybe they like swap shipments. So like some of the shipment, goes down to this Omaha type place to make the ale and liquors and whatever. And then they send that back, and that's their trade. It's more of a trade system for now, instead, because gold hasn't really been established. Well, gold has been established, but it's not as big right now because everything's still rebuilding.
Right, and so probably they know from their stories of the before times, and the elves are still alive. Like, hey, this was our currency.
Yeah,
this was gold. This is what we traded.
Like, gold is still valid. It's not like it's not valid. It's not a valid trade form. It's just it's scarce because of the event. So a lot of people will.
And to a lot of people, it might be meaningless now. It's like, hey, why do I care about gold now?
Yeah.
And then other places might be like, yeah, like other people might be like, yeah, I'll take gold still because like,
yeah,
civilization's coming back. We're gonna need it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the people in the ruins that have the hop, like maybe it's the same family as the guy who owns, or like some relation to the guy that owns the inn, the tavern, but this is like their agreement with the town. It's like, hey, we'll provide this. You provide us with food, so we don't have to hunt anymore, and we can actually start setting up shop. And then also, you don't tell people that we're here. Like, you protect us too. You supply us food. We supply you drink, and everyone's happy.
Well, and that could be just one sect of that big town, because like I'm sure that there's at least in a town that size, depending on how much of the.
Well, remember, it's a destroyed town.
True.
Like, it's not a populated, like that never in my mind is like this populated. It's heavily ruined. People have vacated it because it was not safe to be there, and years have passed, probably since, like, hundreds of years probably since people like called this really home. And then maybe in like the last like decade or so was my thought, like these people were like, hey, we've found this. We've like passed down in our families the knowledge of how to grow hops. We found some like in a field, and we're able to cultivate it, and now we're going again.
Yeah.
It's not great yet, but it's getting better.
But I think in any establishment, you do need to have a few basic places, like, you need to have somebody who can work metal or iron.
Well,
you need to have
that's
somebody...
the point of building Silverforge, because like if we already have all that somewhere, it devalues the fact that Silverforge is trying to do that. And so like I think that's the core part of this story is like they're trying to establish civilization, and because if there's already somewhere else that has these places too, then like it's not a special thing that's rebuilding here at Silverforge. It's just another one that is.
True. But at the same time, like, how like people like live on the outsides like of a big city, and depending on if they absolutely need it, they'll go into town for it. Or if they have like a general store in town that they'll just like pick up a small thing that they need. Like it could be one of those things where Silverforge is more together. It's got all of its stuff together more than this newer town. But maybe it's got a couple of small dealers that are still on the up and up. Maybe they're not that great. They're still trying to figure it out.
I don't know. That like I struggle with that in this because that kind of really hurts the post-apocalyptic like desperateness for trying to create civilization if we already have it. And so that my thoughts to this is like Silverforge is a very new attempt, and it's getting further than other attempts have in least recent memory. And so like other areas, it's either like the people are not surviving by having civilization and having towns and having permanent homes. Most people are surviving by like we have our own farmstead, or we are nomadic and we're moving around with the seasons, chasing game and hunting. And so, like population is not high anywhere, because that would defeat the purpose of this. We're striving to recreate civilization and build up. So that's why I was thinking like this is a deal between like a family or maybe two families big. They're not establishing a town. So like the secrecy side of it is kind of like, hey, we don't want people to know that we grow this. So like when we send you this ship and it doesn't look grand, and maybe it doesn't always come all together, and we sneak it into you, and then we get our goods, we stay for a bit, we come back, and then each time we go, we send a different combination of us so that people aren't like, oh, it's that guy, he's got this stuff. And that's why the barkeep wasn't too worried when it was a day or two late, because it was like, yeah, they change up their routes and stuff, but this is the direction it should come from. They like to use the river because it eases things for them. It should have been here by now. Now it's way late. And I'm going to be in trouble here soon, like not going to be able to run my brand new tavern and inn.
Right.
And it's like, I can supply water, but people don't pay for water. I'm not going to be able to trade for food. So like, can you guys go find the shipment, and in return, you get free room and board, or
yeah, I can get behind that. I was just thinking like the town's gonna grow at some point. It's not gonna just stay in ruins. I think it's just maybe it just takes more time.
Well, I think like Silverforge will for sure grow, and other towns will establish throughout. Like if this is a living world, especially when Silverforge gets successful, like maybe at this like here soon there'll be talks of like, oh, another townstead is forming and we need to help them out, or this townstead's forming, but it's out of these like people we've exiled, or people have raided us before, so maybe we don't want to help these ones out. Like maybe we need to fortify, because like some of it's gonna be rivals, some of it's gonna be friendly.
Mm-hmm.
There's gonna be that conflict, and I think that can establish. But I think in this immediate vicinity, like having one that's near Silverforge level, like Maymah probably would have stomped that out real quick because she doesn't want a rival or something threatening her plans. So like this dude making beer or whatever he's making in this ruins, like a day's trek or a day and a half's trek away, Maymah is not going to stomp that out because that's beneficial to her plans. That's going to bring people to her town. But if it was like they're trying to establish a full town there, then stuff's going to befell them. Things are going to go their way, and that's because Maymah doesn't want rivals in her immediate vicinity while she's trying to establish power and can stop it.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
So if like we wanted to go further away than that, though, and have like another town set starting up and like say it's, but I think then we'd have to go much longer supply time because it would have to be a much further trek to where it's not like, oh, if people don't like my leadership, they're just going to go to that town a day and a half away.
Yeah.
Then I'd like, because like if it was like a 3 weeks trek, then yeah, let's have it be another Silverforge level experience or near that. And they have maybe like some town structure, because that's going to be just far enough away that that's happening that Maymah's like, you know what? I can't stop that. That's too far away. Also, that's enough inconvenience for my people to not abandon me and stuff.
You're onto something though. What if we do both and? So we say, okay,
both and. I love that.
The ruins could be part of the next leg of the adventure because other parts of the fractured are trying to grab old artifacts from this said big area. But what if we do this? We say, okay, the stead that's making the spirits, right? I'm just going to call them spirits just for ease of words. They're roughly about a week away, like a week's travel. So we can have like a 3-week lead time, and on that third week, it's got to be on the road. So that way it meets it. So it's like you get 2 weeks to fill the order, and then 1 week for travel, and then that's how they get their lead time cycles.
Okay, so maybe it's like a 4 weeks worth of supply, then on a 3-week cadence.
Yes, but then they find out as they're getting here for this shipment about this set of ruins that are over in the distance this way or whatever direction, that there's been some shady dealings going on. So in the meantime, the fractured have been trying to establish a base of operations within these ruins because there may or may not be some ancient tomes, artifacts, etc., but it takes them a while to dig through an Omaha-sized city worth of rubble and stuff.
And they are starting to interfere with... So I like this. This is feeling a lot more like potential mainline thread. My original thought was that this trek wasn't a mainline story. It was a side quest. But I don't hate the idea of having it bleed into. It feel like, starts like a side quest feel.
Yeah.
But then it's like, oh wait, no, this wasn't. Like, this actually, when you turn and look back to it later, would have mainline thread. And starts maybe even introducing some of the like phase 2 and phase 3 villains.
So a week-long travel, we're probably talking about a solid 130-mile trek from Silverforge. Give or take, 140?
130 to 140 miles. Are we okay with still using miles? I'm an American. I have to talk miles. We can convert it. I'm sorry, listeners. I know, like, I full on will recognize the benefits in that the fact that the metric system is just flat easier to learn. But I'm sorry, I grew up in the United States and just miles were pounded into my brain. So if you tell me a mile, I've ran a mile. I know how far that is. But if you tell me the kilometers, I'm like, what is that in miles? And I apologize.
For those of you who live outside of the U.S., yes, we actually do take our feet and use those as measuring sticks sometimes.
No. Well, okay.
We don't
That's
remove
only
our
because
feet
my
from our
foot-
legs. We don't remove them from our legs. We just go foot by foot by foot by foot, and like 6 feet.
So for me though, like my shoe size is only an eighth of an inch off of being a true foot long. And so that, like, I try to eyeball that.
I'm like, I will give you the exact approximate of about this much. So
I hope we're not just confirming all these biases about Americans right now. So yeah,
international.
Out of everything you hear,
listeners, please let us know how different this is for you guys. That would be such a fun discussion. But let's get back to it. Okay. So
I'm so thrown off right
140 miles, and translate how you will, from Silverforks. Now we need to name that place.
I think it should be the ruins of, and then whatever its name used to.
Ooh, I have an idea.
You have an idea. I like that you have an idea.
Me too. Question is, will it work?
See, I always struggle with this because I have this deep desire whenever I'm thinking D&D stuff. I have a tendency to gravitate towards more token-esque settings, so I try to think back to, like, you know, they had Elandriel and like names like that. I know that was a person, not a city, my bad. Listeners, again, it's that full on-the-spot feeling. I try to think of names like that, and then I get in my head about it, because then I'm like, is that a real unique name that I'm making up, or is that from a different book I've read and I'm just ripping it off? And so then I worry a little bit.
You can only do so much. I mean,
yeah. And listeners, if we do ever go to publish this, we all obviously check stuff, make sure we're not infringing on someone's copyright. So if we, I'm not saying we will, but if we ever do and it comes out and you're like, hey, this is different than what you said in the podcast, preemptive apology now, because we're not pre-checking. Really, listeners, the idea behind this is to kind of show you all the stuff that you could think of in a setting, not really to say, like, here is, although, like, that is my ultimate goal, is to be able to take this and say, all right, let's go play it. Because I think that would be fun and cool, but also the idea is just kind of show process. Obviously elongated because there's 2 of us and we're doing it in an episodic setting. Again, to do this for real campaign, I'd already have the date that I was looking to start at, and it wouldn't take me this far to get this far, I don't think, but maybe it will. Sometimes I hit like hardcore writer's block when I'm trying to think of stuff for D&D, and then it does take me a long time. And that's when you guys have stories like the cow moving twice. That's an inside joke with my party. There's several that would laugh big time with that cow moved twice, but listeners, I'm sure you're like, it's a cow.
They're rolling in their chairs right now.
Yep. Oh, for sure. So for all six of you out there that know that joke, because I would make the 7th, you're welcome. That was for you. Please listen.
Oh my god. Okay, so name that city. Oh, I had one in my head. What was it?
The ruins of Antheron?
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 Antheron.
Make it 3 syllables. Antheron.
Antheron. Yep. All right. We'll use that as a name holder at this point.
Yep. I spelled that Antheron, listeners.
Perfect.
For those who are taking notes at home, probably better than mine.
Let's say this is a former human city.
Human.
What
I was thinking of is, so, like, we never really established how high-techy the pre-apocalyptic world was. So I don't know if it had cobblestone roads or if they ever got to pavement. I don't know. I always struggle with that in my fantasy. I love ye old time. I love most going token. And so doing it in this setting, it's like, well, like, yeah, we're kind of in that now, but what were they? So maybe they were to brick and mortar and like brick streets.
Ooh, fancy.
Yeah, some brick streets, some dirt, maybe some cobble.
And let's see, how big do we want to make this little town, city?
So maybe at its heyday,
Couple thousand?
yeah, maybe like a 5,000
Okay.
in its heyday, and now it's maybe population 25,
Oh, wow.
counting the younglings.
Literally just getting back on there. Okay.
Maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's now population like 200.
Yeah.
If you count like the scattered surrounding,
Yeah.
like people who don't really live in there, but they come in enough.
Right.
And
enough to establish commerce, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe they have, instead of like a restaurant and a tavern, maybe they have like the cafe that has a bread. It's like a bread and breakfast, but it's open for more meals than that.
There you go. Okay.
And then you have that doubles as also the market in the backside.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have that structure that's maybe nice. And then you would have housing that's kind of made out of the ruins and outhouses and stuff like that.
I'm digging it.
And then it's probably heavily focused on farming and ag. So when you come in, it's good food here because part of the year they maybe even like, I don't know because I can't remember. Your notes are the better at the typography. What typography was east?
Oh, yeah. Let me pull them up here. I feel like that was going to be more, because the south is more tropical.
Mm-hmm. So that would have had like fruits and that would have been harder to raise livestock.
Mm-hmm.
Not impossible. Just not the same as what we're used to in the Midwest Plains of
the Midwest.
The United States. Yeah. Well, I didn't want to say the Midwest Plains of the Midwest. That wasn't going to sound good. It's not a bad thing. I love being an American, but also I'm very much aware of that,
East is desert. Oh, okay. That's going to throw a wrench in things.
Whoops.
They do need Silver Forge for the trade, but they have better storage, fermentation, and...
Yep. And maybe it's more than like wine.
Could be.
Grapes growing, and they probably rely a lot on the seasonal nature of that area of the desert because they probably then... So I'm thinking desert, probably this area this far away from Silver Forge, be a lot more like Arizona.
Yep.
So my mind's instantly now going to Tombstone. I know I've talked about this previously on the podcast a little bit, but fun fact, if you study Tombstone's history at all with Wyatt Earp ate ice cream every day in Tombstone, and it was a mine town. So it's not impossible for this to be theorized that they would have the ability to store meat. So like maybe the problem is that the barkeep sent his payment of, hey, to them. So now I'm trying to think more of like how this works in trade and bartering system. So the tavern in Silver Forge gets the drink to sell.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're then selling the drink to people in exchange for what in Silver Forge? Well, raw goods. So you have minerals, the building of stuff from the blacksmith, but then also pry meat and grain and cooked good, like all this stuff. So it's probably a wide variety of stuff.
Grains and like ironwork.
Yeah, and it probably varies a little bit because not every customer is going to have the same stuff in this system.
True.
So then what does he trade back for the wine? Well, what would they not have in this desert area? They could have some livestock out there, but it's not going to be as plentiful or as healthy. Probably grain for that livestock is really what they need, hardcore, and then depending on the time of year, maybe some other foods as well. And so maybe he sent that. And so he's like, I sent that and my runner came back and I would have expected their shipment to follow and their shipment's not here. And so I need to send you because my initial thought isn't going to go to they've betrayed me because we got this system and we're pretty symbiotic at this point. But maybe he's sending him with somebody to collect the info.
Might be a touch cliche, but maybe one of the people that was on the run survived because they got ambushed.
Oh, there you go.
That person can lead the party to where that route was supposed to be, and maybe see if they can recover that shipment. Maybe.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and then from there we can figure out the ruins. Maybe next time. Yeah,
because we are decent length in. So listeners, we are now trying to divide these episodes. We will work on getting this more into that 50-50 feel as I do all these wacky waving, inflatable arm waving two-man gestures to try to throw off Shay, and it's not working. So, Shay, what is our topic question today for the more table level, how to play D&D, how to DM D&D level talk?
So I had I don't know if anybody watches How I Met Your Mother.
I love that show.
But there's an episode where like everybody has this like glass shattering moment when they don't realize that they do something, and when it gets brought to their attention that they do it, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I actually do this."
Yeah, Lily's even eating cotton candy sounds like she's chewing glass.
Yeah, exactly.
Crush, crush.
So, but the reason I got to think about that was because I was thinking about one of our previous episodes where we were talking about parties, and we said, hey, boots, cats, boots, cats, boots. Cats.
Raise the roof. Yeah. Totally that type of party, right?
Yeah, we're white and we know it. But I was thinking about it because I think it was me that mentioned that an ideal party size is somewhere between 4 to 5 players. And I took stock of that because I looked at my party and I'm like, I have 7 players. And there's 7.
Let me count. I'm not going to say their names out loud for fear.
I'll come back to you. So basically my thought was like, okay, if the ideal party is like 4, maybe 5 players, how do you deal with bigger parties? Like when you get into 7 or maybe even more. I've heard one DM, he had up to 15 people in the same party. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's a huge party. And and I got to think about this because my boss fight that I had mentioned was 7.5 hours long. And I got to be like, okay, so how does a DM go about going with bigger parties? And for me, it's kind of worked out in a sense because of the group dynamic. A lot of the this group of mine has gelled together very well, and they enjoy playing together, which has made my job a lot easier. But at the same time, it's kind of fun because they can do a couple of things. One, if we have one person or 2 people missing, we can still have session. And unfortunately, we'll miss them. But at the same time, we can still carry on with the main theme for that night. The other thing is, especially for like your specialties, like your clerics, when you get in a big boss fight and everybody's needing hit points, it's nice to have 2 healers in the party that can go and play combat medic. Or if you get 2 spies and one of them kind of gets booby trapped somewhere, you have a little redundancy. A little bit, but at the same time, like they can also work together to solve like that allows you to have more creative traps because you have more than one person trying to figure those out at the same time. Yeah, I laugh at that when you say that because I'm thinking about my party, which I counted out, listeners, and honestly, it's because at this point I don't really think about it. And that's why I had to stop and think how many of you guys there actually is. So I have 6 players plus me. I make the 7th as the DM. So obviously I DM for 6 people. I kept thinking you had 7, but okay, 6 it is. We have a 7th that can join. He just, because of starting a family, has chosen to. So his character is now a champion of the gods and can get teleported in. So he's not very he at the moment doesn't get to play very regularly, although he misses it. We miss him. We miss him big time. But I was laughing when you were saying that you can have that double healer or double tank. And I was like, yeah, we didn't really spread out the roles a lot in our group. We have the 2 druids, although you guys play it very differently. And I have mad respect on that. Because when I first found out we were going to have a second druid, I was like, wow, this is just going to be a wild shape city, hardcore. All the time, and honestly it hasn't been, and that's blown my mind a bit. It's mostly just me that does the wild shape. The other druid just is more practical with how she plays her character, which is awesome. And she won D&D in record-setting time. I didn't know D&D was a game you could just outright win, but within 3 play sessions, she had a family. She had earned a nickname of the Eviscerator from NPCs. She had more gold than the rest of the party combined. And I was like, it's your 3rd session? What are you doing? How are you doing this? She ended up being like a high-ranking general for the enemy team.
Yeah, that happened.
Yeah, that totally happened. So like she won. She can roll credits and then play the game all Grand Theft Auto style because she can just do whatever she wants. Anyway,
really, I think, like you said, the party gelling together is a ton of it.
Yeah,
because I'm spoiled outright, and I will say that to any other DM. I feel so blessed and so lucky. You guys gelled from day one, and we've really not had a lot of times of people getting heated with each other, knock on wood.
But if we do, it's always been in character. It's not like like person to person. It's just been like a character moment.
Yeah, there's been a lot of the characters arguing, but then the players are laughing about it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just speaks a lot to you guys as players, and I feel like I've caught lightning in a bottle a little bit with you guys, and I'm just really lucky with that.
Yeah.
And also, I feel like we kind of worked our way up to that a little bit. It started a little bit smaller, and now like also the party feels bigger because our rogue has minions that he likes to command around, so the party feels bigger.
That's true.
But it works because I think everybody's invested in each other's stories. And we do sometimes, because the one thing I do think is very hard with a party this size is how long combat is. You talking about your 7.5 hour boss fight. This battle that I have going on is going to be in its third session when we meet again. I was like, do you guys remember this fight? Are you sure? We're going to have to recap the whole campaign. Yeah, the hard part is how long combats go. And one piece of advice I have is it's okay, DMs, if during that one or two of the players want to use that as time to go up, get a drink, hit the bathroom, come back and get a recap. The one thing that I would say on that is don't allow it to be at everybody's turn. You're having to recap everybody else's turn.
Yes.
Have some of the players that have stayed attentive recap it to the side to that player so that you're not elongating already long gaps for people. Because the board's going to change a ton between turns when you have 7 players or 6 players. And that person that has 15, I don't think you always guaranteed a second or even first turn on every combat, depending on the size you're doing.
One of the things, though, too, and I was talking to another DM just for kicks and giggles, and he brought up a good point. He says, if you have, like, big groups, make them a group instead of an individual unit. And that will help you speed up your combats as well. So, like, if you have, like, a group A of minions, group B of minions, group C of minions, use that to your advantage so that way you're not rolling 15 different attacks out of one group and then you get a player and then you roll another 10 attacks. Do it almost like a swarm tactic is what he kind of referenced it to. And I thought that made a lot of sense because that way you're not, it's like one turn, boom, 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 boom.
I've taken advantage of that a lot. Mad love that respect. I've often used waves of minions with maybe one boss minion that gets a different turn. Except for when we're encountering multiple of the big bosses because you guys decided to split up again.
You're not bitter about that, are you?
10 minutes of real time is all you had to wait.
I'd have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you meddling kids and your dang bear.
Oh, I just know somewhere my wizard doesn't even know we're talking about this yet, but he's laughing at me. Because he knows he ruined my plans again. And he lives for that. I'm convinced he lives for
wizard!
That. See, normally it's the druid you gotta watch for, but I gotta watch both the druids and the wizard and the rogue and the 2 warriors and...
I will say this, though, like, with making big parties, one of the things, like, even though I have... Okay, so, like, I have 2 sneaky people, right?
Very, very sneaky stuff.
I have one that's an actual rogue, right? But I have another person who is a shadow sorcerer. So he's familiar with shadow, and he's okay with a lockpick, but he's not the rogue who is an expert with the lockpick. You know what I mean? Or like I have a fighter and a barbarian where they're both meat shields, but they both attack very differently and they have very different attacking styles, which obviously with a couple of our fighters in your group. Whereas like my healers are kind of the same way. One of them likes to stay back and do like arrows and long shot magic. The other one loves to try and use the spell command, which has yet to work for him. I don't know what it is. My dice like to save against his command spells. It just hasn't worked yet. But like that's
one of these days.
What I know, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And then my sorcerer also doubles with my warlock as my magic-y people, like kind of more your traditional magical people. And they'll sit there and do like sniper shots and, you know, cantrips and all that stuff. So I have, it's like they're doubled up in certain ways, but they're also individually different in certain ways, if that makes sense. Like they do their thing and they do it well, and it's very similar to the other, but it's not necessarily the same. I will say the clerics are a mirror of each other, only because I built the female cleric first because they needed a cleric and they needed her bad. And then when the second cleric came along, I was like, I really, really want to play something like this. And once he pitched me the concept, I was like, okay, that's fine. That makes sense. But other than that, everybody else is their own person and they all interact with the world differently. And it's really fun to watch.
Yeah, I think a big thing with the big groups is you got to give everybody that role play to establish how their character is different. And you got to give them those opportunities. And then it's a big deal for then the parties to be able to play off of each other, because if they're playing off each other like that, then they're gonna create that dynamic, and then you as the DM don't have to police it anymore. You don't have to maintain how they're different. They will just do it. And it all starts from, you know, making sure out the gate you give everybody their time to shine. And if you're like me, where you introduced a new character midway because you had a new player join your party and you had somebody leave the party, we didn't kill off that character when he left the party. We came up with the way that he could join in. The whole, he earned favor of his god. Now he can be dropped in by his god when needed. And then that new character I made sure she got some spotlight right out the gate, because wanted to establish, like, this is who she is and how she's fit into the world a little bit, and didn't put her on the spotlight, talked to her about that beforehand, and then made sure that there was opportunities for others to kind of interact with that, not just like, hey, it's her show, but it's like, hey, this is the world that we have, this is your character, this is the other characters, this is how you guys meet, that kind of stuff. And it was like they met in a big battle, there was this conflict, she got to showcase her stuff, roll some dice, and then
we're like, hey, you're with us.
When she annihilated some orcs, they were like, hey, you're awesome,
you're with us. Although I think the funniest part about this whole thing is, since we have two druids with scheduling and stuff like that, I don't know if the two druids have actually talked to each other yet. And
it's fit in world because you guys are on different continents.
Yeah. You two are on different continents for all. Now you're finally in the same, you're technically in the same city, although like several hundred feet of depth apart. Because yours is down in the mines.
You know, we're not gonna.
Yeah, you're unconscious, and she's nearly unconscious.
Hey, at least we'll have that in common.
Yeah, I am looking forward to the first time when you guys really get to interact. That's not over your guys' Emerald of Communication, aka a Stone of Far speech.
Yep,
but
the EOC, as we call it.
I don't let them name things anymore, listeners.
It's true. He revoked her privileges, but it's fun. It's fine.
Because they're like, well, describe it. It's like, well, it's an Emerald communication device, like an Emerald of Communication. I was like, yeah, and they go, an EOC. And I was like, no, like, that's our name.
He's like, curse you.
Yep. All right, sir, you owe us a game update.
That I do. Okay, so we...
Spin that yarn.
My group was fortunate to be able to meet here this last weekend, and... So basically what had happened was the party had just got done defeating an Etten, and they had gotten... Wow. Yeah, they actually smoked that thing pretty quick. And then they ended up in this big kind of chamber with a big water pool in the middle of it. And they had found a door to the north, a hallway to the north, a doorway to the west, and a doorway to the south of where they had come in from the east side of this room. And
so every other direction had a door?
The south and the west had a door, the north had a hallway and a door.
Gotcha. Now I'm following better.
Okay. So then basically as they came in, they tried to pick lock the door on the south side, and they fumbled it. Yeah, pink. So they basically hauled out of Dodge. They got back, and as they did that, the person that walked out of the room was a very familiar face to the original three people, because this person had started a cult underneath the town of Red Larch where they started, and they had defeated him. Well, he comes walking out of this room again.
Like, wait, we beat you?
Exactly. And so, to his credit, my barbarian got really, really mad and went to charge the door, and then he critical failed and fell face first right in front of the door.
Classic barbarian.
I know.
I love it.
So we have a running joke about, because our warlock loves to eat pickles, and so when they go to breach a door, they'll say, "Kosher, kosher, kosher, go, go, go."
I love when characters have nuances like that. It's like, I love pickles. You guys have pickles. My group has pixie drink for the 6'10" mega warrior guy. He likes pixie drink.
That's right. And so the sorcerer actually came around and actually cast a firebolt, like a massive firebolt, into the room that the guy came out of. Set the room basically on fire for about half a second, and caught one guy on fire in there, and then so the fight ensued. Make a long story short, they go in there, the room is singed, and then they get in a fight with a torture implementer in the room. Once they dispatch him, they take a look around the room, and there were 4 people being tortured. 2 of them were civilians. One of them had a motif of a cult that they had previously dealt with. And the 4th person was someone who was actually kicked out of the cult that they were, of the group that they were in, their city. And in exchange for her freedom, she basically wanted to help them dispatch the cult itself, and knew where the leader's headquarters was. And so they were in the process of figuring out if they were going to trust this person or not. So that's where we left off, and that's where we'll pick up next month.
Woo! Sounds like you guys are hitting some heavy, fun story beats now.
Oh, yeah. We're getting into a lot of heavy roleplay, which is a lot of fun.
That's my favorite. Like, we've been locked in battle for a while now, my group, and I like it. It's like, that's fun too.
Yeah.
But my favorite sessions are the ones where the party's just talking the whole time, and every once in a while I supply NPC input. But for the most, like, they're driving what the conversation is.
We try to not let Kyle talk as much as possible until he has to describe a situation. And he loves it, and we do too, but for different reasons. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
We're going to redo your death saving throws for no reason.
Dakar just died, everybody. Man, this is great.
No, I like Dakar for the Dakar, the plane to plane Dakar jokes that we do all the time.
To crash.
Yeah.
Well, listeners, thank you so much once again for joining us. This is something that Shay and I absolutely love doing, and it absolutely blows our minds that you guys enjoy listening to it. At least I hope you're enjoying it. That it felt presumptuous, but if you are enjoying this, please let us know in the comments. That helps a lot with the algorithms. You know, the liking and the subscribing and all that stuff. It really does help. So do the podcast thing. You know it by now. But listeners, what really we love more than anything is when we hear from you guys. So if you have stories about your campaigns that you're playing in, a campaign idea, thoughts on the campaign we're making, thoughts on party sizes, if you have led a party that you thought was large, you know, or maybe you've led one more than 15 people, I really want to hear from you.
I do too.
I want to know how you handle that.
And then also, if your party's only 4 or 2 people, we still want to hear from you, because truly we do this because we know we don't have all the answers. We want to grow too, but we also do this because we love this game and we want to meet more people who love this game as well. So you can reach out to us at dungeonmastertalk@gmail.com or on the Facebook at the Dungeon Master Talk Facebook page. And you can also hit us up on X, formerly known as Twitter, I guess now is what we call that, at DMT the Podcast. You can also use the hashtag Dungeon Master Talk. and we'd like to hear from you guys there. And I, of course, as always, I am Kyle, and he is Shay, and we'll see you guys next time.